Today on Locked On Rockies, really, there's only one thing to talk about. That Kris Bryant piece that came out in The Athletic. There's a lot to dive into.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the first day of March in the year 2024. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You're in the right spot because that's what we do around here is talk Rockies baseball each and every day. Free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel where you can be part of the show. And if you're firing off your Rockies hot takes, let me know what's on your mind as a Rockies fan. We talk about it here on the show. So please go subscribe to Locked On Rockies. Let me know what is on your mind and what you are thinking. And maybe your reactions to this Kris Bryant piece here from The Athletic, which is definitely going to be our main focus today. This story basically highlights a whole bunch of things, and we're going to dive into all of that and, of course, talk a little bit about yesterday's crazy spring training game as well. But before we dive into everything today, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. If you didn't see yesterday, there was a piece in The Athletic titled Kris Bryant left the spotlight behind in Chicago. In Colorado, his burden is different. This is by Sam Blum. And there's a lot of stuff to go off of here, but we'll read it. And I want to talk about the reaction as well. But basically, it's another moment where the Colorado Rockies' reputation, it was another day of sitting on Twitter, on social media, and scrolling and doing my Rockies stuff. And another reminder of how bad the Rockies' reputation is, how poorly received this team is by not only apparently some of its players, but by also the people that, Denver media. The Rockies' perception, the reputation of the Rockies arguably can't get much worse than what it's been. The Rockies have never truly recovered from the Nolan Arenado trade. They've never really fully built up a dominant farm system to really make themselves confident in what they're doing throughout this process. And they've opened themselves up to these criticisms because when you read some of this stuff, mostly from Bill Schmidt, honestly, it doesn't seem to quite line up with our understanding. I wanted to let's just read some stuff here. This was Brian. Let's see. They talk about a billboard and it being erected and it being a big moment and kind of intimidating and not exactly what Kris Bryant wanted and how he was kind of hoping the end of his time in Chicago was going to go. But now then it goes on and moves on to how weird the offseason was with the lockout and signing with the Rockies. So let's start here. There's so much desire to be the best you can be the best in the game, get to the mountaintop, Brian said. But at the same time, as I'm getting older, you have to have the right perspective first get to that point. I think at certain times throughout my career, I've lost some perspective and it's made me spiral more than I need to. It might be tempting to make a connection between a career that unwillingly started with that Billboard episode and in his prime star later signing a 7-year, $182 million contract to play for a bad team that exists in baseball obscurity. Look at that language. The Rockies have not done enough to avoid from people that are on the outside cover this team. Can't help but always bring up that the fact that they are bad. They've been run bad, and they haven't done enough to get out of the depths. Little segue there. Bryant began his decision. But Bryant insists the genesis of this unlikely marriage is more closely tied to a set of rushed circumstances and perhaps his misjudging the state of the Rockies farm system and how ready they were to compete. Bryant began discussions with the Rockies before the lockout started in late in December 2021. When it ended 3 months later, everyone was reporting to camp, but not him. And because of that, he felt the need to make a decision. It's like, oh, shoot, I need to get there, Bryant said. There were other teams interested, but I didn't want to wait around. It was a completely different situation for a lot of free agents at the time. I guess I didn't do as much research into the prospects as I could. It's a decision that he now has to live with for the next 5 years. When Bryant signed with the Rockies, the team had just eaten around $50 million to ship their previous superstar third baseman Nolan Arenado to St. Louis. There were a few other established players on the roster. A pathway to contention seemed unlikely, even with Bryant in the fold, making the deal something of a head-scratcher from both sides. Here's the part where I get extra frustrated. The frustration already builds from reading the Bryant's comments. But here's the deal. That hope for he was a good player to add with some of the young guys coming up and what we had at the time, said Rockies GM Bill Schmidt when asked why they'd sign Bryant and make no other major acquisitions when coming off 3 sub-500 seasons. There's nothing more than that. That's BS. It's baloney. And it's Bill Schmidt covering his butt here. We know it is well documented how badly Bill Schmidt and the Colorado Rockies wanted Kris Bryant. We know how much Kris Bryant meant to Bill Schmidt and getting that deal done, especially very early in the Schmidt tenure of GM here, of being a GM. And I want to go up here a little bit more to where is this quote here? I want to go to another quote there that's from Bill Schmidt. I'm sorry, it's kind of in here. Let me just do a Control F. Sorry, I know this is not good for the podcast, but blah, 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 blah. Schmidt made a point of saying that he never acquired Bryant to be the face of their franchise. I just wanted him to be one of the guys. Bryant's hitting coach in Chicago, John Maley, immediately brought up that now infamous billboard as a point of consternation. I'm sure being there and signing a big contract, he's such a good person. He doesn't want to let his teammates down. He tries so hard. Malley says that's a compliment to him in a way, that he cares so much that he feels like if he isn't performing, he's letting the team down. We were trying to talk him out of that. I couldn't disagree more with Schmidt making a point of they signed Kris Bryant to fill the superstar gap. There is no way. There is no cover up. There is no story you can spin. There is no yarn that you can weave that makes me not think that that doesn't disagree completely with Bill Schmidt saying that he never wanted Kris Bryant to be the face of the franchise. That is BS. You don't refer to someone as the aircraft carrier of your team, and you don't pay someone a 7-year, $180+ million contract to not be a star of your team. You don't go out and get a former MVP, a World Series champion, to not be the star of your team. Oh, he's just going to be another one of the guys that the hitting coach in Chicago says. That's not who Kris Bryant is, and that's not who Kris Bryant is supposed to be for the Colorado Rockies. That is a farce. You don't bring Kris Bryant in to just be another one of the guys. Chicago hitting coach John Mayle, that you don't get 7 years, 8 years, $180 million, the second largest free agent contract in franchise history, is not given out to nobodies. You don't give that level of money to a player if the focus is not making him the star. Kris Bryant was signed to fill the hole of Nolan that was left by the Nolan Arenado trade, and to give the Rockies fans the thing that they have had throughout their entire tenure. There has always been at least one superstar level player on the roster. And for Bill Schmidt to just kind of say that, he was a good fit with the young guys, and for Kris Bryant to say, I didn't do enough research on the prospects. Well, all it takes is one Google. I did one Google search this morning to see where the Rockies prospects ranked by MLB.com heading into 2021. They were nearly at the bottom. there's so much still left to unpack here, and there's still so much frustrations, because I got to go back to the Kris Bryant part of it too, and highlight the fact that I don't care that he's getting into this point where as he's getting older, as he's learning to appreciate the game and approach it that way. I don't mind that. It's work. It's his job. It's a completely different situation. But I'm also not going to sit here and allow Kris Bryant to just kind of throw his arms up and say, well, I didn't really do my research on the team and I was rushed. So we're supposed to just sit here and just accept that the Rockies were lucked into a big old, they just said, we're just going to go throw a bunch of money at this guy that we don't need him to be the face of the franchise. Well, we just think he's a good fit for our young guys. It's BS dripping out of the mouth of every person talking right here. And I want to keep talking about it here coming up in segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about some of the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet at FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's $150 if your bet wins. Nuggets, I mean, we're going to have to see what happens with Jamal Murray. That's going to be interesting. But a couple of big wins for the Nuggets. Why not get your $150 in bonus bets by betting on Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets? Or maybe you want to go and bet on some hockey, maybe do some MLB futures. Maybe you're really excited for football and you want to try your luck at some really early NFL futures. You can do it all at America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. They got quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more, all on their super easy-to-use app. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on for your chance to shoot your shot at $150 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, you're in the right spot. If you need more sports coverage, you can go check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. We're talking Kris Bryant today. We're talking Kris Bryant's story in The Athletic as Kris Bryant opens up about playing here. And in case you're curious about the story I'm mentioning, Kris Bryant left the spotlight behind in Colorado, in Chicago. In Colorado, His Burden is Different by Sam Blum on The Athletic. But I want to go back and focus on this stuff here. I want to bring this up as we talked about how I think that the Bill Schmidt quotes in here are complete BS for how they approach this. They don't do a press conference for just signing any players, and they haven't spent anywhere close to the amount of money. I can't even believe that there was a quote in this that is just said, he was a good player to add with some of the young guys coming up and what we had at the time. There's nothing more of that. There's nothing more than that. Just not true. Not true whatsoever. But I also want to flip. I also want to flip this on Kris Bryant. He can sit here and be like, maybe I should have looked at the farm system. Maybe I should have reevaluated. How about this? Focus on getting healthy. Focus on staying healthy. And I understand that it's been unlucky, but I'm sorry. You do not get to be paid the level that you get paid and then get to just waltz into Colorado because it's not Chicago and the pressure's not on and not face criticism. This deal is going to go down as one of the most highly scrutinized deals in Colorado Rockies history. This is a controversial signing from the start that has not come anywhere close to panning out. Right now, the Kris Bryant situation is blocking prospects. It's now the guy that was signed to the second biggest contract, a free agent contract in Rockies history, was not projected to be the face of the franchise. What on earth are we talking about here? We are talking about a player that saw dollar signs and the best opportunity. Research on the farm system. He wasn't doing that. He saw the dollars. It's the lockout. He got $180 million deal on the wall. Baseball was locked out. And it's not that crazy to sit here and say, my expectations for you, Kris Bryant, are MVP level. You are an MVP. And there were signs of your declining performance. I understand that. But you don't get to just go to Colorado and go off to the pasture. I know that's usually how it works, but there are some of us that care. There are Rockies fans that care. You read all the coverage of it. The Rockies stink. No one's going to care. No one cares about this. I care. I care. People who watch this show care. It's time for people that are in the Rockies organization to care as well. It's time for the Colorado Rockies to start doing something to change their image, change their reputation, because it is so exhausting being a fan, someone who actually cares deeply about this team, someone who spends money to watch this team, someone who spends money on merch, someone who spends my valuable time watching and focusing on this, on a team that is totally content with continuing to be a laughingstock. I got a GM over here covering his butt because and completely going against what he said, going against the whole philosophy, the whole point of bringing in Kris Bryant. And I got Kris Bryant coming in here just, hey, I wish things could have gone a little different. I'm getting a little older. I'm reperception. I like being it. I don't want to be in the spotlight. I'm not a big talker guy. That's fine. But I want you to care about getting this team to the next level. I want to hear that you still have the fire to compete with the Colorado Rockies. Is it that hard to ask for you to be a little bit more pumped up about being a member of the Rockies? This is literally one of the feature of this. This is a feature on Kris Bryant that continues to just highlight just issues with the Rockies. It highlights Kris Bryant's issues as well here. Let's go into some of the numbers and some of the things that they were looking at. But even if he has a bounce back year, I'm reading from the Athletic piece. Even if he has a bounce back year, Bryant is not expected to single-handedly carry this club to the postseason. But there is a desire for Bryant to live up to both his contract and the standards he's established for himself. However, things have only gotten worse for him in the last 2 years. He's played 122 games over 2 injury-marred seasons, posting a paltry 680 OPS in 80 games last year. All of his exit velocity numbers have dipped precipitously. His hard hit percentage was just 31.5% in 2023. That's way down from his rookie season, 43.8%, and his career average, 36.8%. His expected slugging percentage was 548 in his MVP season. Last year, it was 413. His barrel percentage was 6% last year. His career average is 9.6%. By the numbers, Bryant's ability to square the ball up is seemingly in free fall. He said that injuries are solely at fault, namely the plantar fasciitis in 2022 and a broken finger last year. He added that finding a groove is difficult with inconsistent availability. I get that. I will ride that, but prove it, man. There is nothing short of prove everyone wrong, prove me wrong, prove the haters wrong, prove the doubters wrong. And it's not just Kris Bryant. The Rockies in general have to do it. The time to continue to just spin in circles and just act as a team in baseball obscurity as one of the nicer ways to say crappy. And that's not really the word that I want to use here anyway. It fires me up because when these stories come out, it just continues to highlight the issues with the Colorado Rockies. And we still don't really necessarily sit here and think that this team is going to turn it around and fix things. But I'm not giving Kris Bryant an easy skid here. And he says this: why would I let any narrative out there take me away from doing the work I need to do on a daily basis? I'm out there giving it all I got. I want to be on the field. I want to play. I want to do well. And that's really all I can ask of myself. And that's fine. And I'm glad that he is taking on a leadership role. But to sit here and just do a piece and just sit here and say, yeah, I wish things went a little differently how it ended in Chicago. My decision was a little rushed. I didn't do my research. Then what did you do? What did you know about the Rockies going into this? You knew that they were going to offer you a long-term deal for $180 million, and you took it, and that's fine. You're a professional. Do that. Get your money. The Rockies were the ones offering it. That's a lot of money to offer for a guy that's not supposed to be the new face of your franchise there, Bill. Oh, that's a good one. But whether it be Kris Bryant, whether it be Bill Schmidt, whether it be the Rockies in general, this team has to prove it this year. They have to prove that they are getting better. They have to prove that they believe in these young guys. They have to prove that they have a core of players, including Kris Bryant, that can compete in this league. Or else you're going to continue to see stories about this, of players regretting, of doubting, of talking crap, basically, about their teams. I mean, it's not like he's really throwing real mud at the Rockies, but he's completely reevaluating his $180 million 7-year contract. That's a problem. And then for Bill Schmidt to undervalue the whole Kris Bryant signing and deal when there was a press conference, when he was a guy that has been targeted by that guy and this team for a long time, a documented history of that, to just say, he's a guy that fit in with those young guys we had. That 21 ranked, that farm system that ranked in the bottom half of baseball, near the bottom 5 in baseball in 2021. Yeah, that's it. He fit well with those young guys. The same young guys that are coming up right now that he is blocking the position in the development of. Man, you're right, Kris Bryant. It is hard to get results without consistent playing time. How do you think Eleris Montero feels? How do you think Sean Bouchard, Michael Tolia, Hunter Goodman feel? Because they're not going to get regular playing time because you were signed to be the leader, to be the MVP, to be the face of the franchise. I am not letting Bill Schmidt slide on that one. No way does Bill Schmidt get to sit there and say that he wasn't looking for him to be the new face of the franchise. Charlie Blackmon was still at the end of the career, and Kris Bryant was still supposed to be the one healthy enough with with time on that contract remaining to be the new face. In the wake of losing Arenado and Story, Kris Bryant was brought in to be a superstar, and he has not been a superstar. He has to be productive this year. He has to be healthy. And then we can hope that he even gets close to sniffing superstar status again. That's where we're at with Kris Bryant. So he have your regrets, be upset, be disappointed, and maybe think that things should have gone differently. But he can do that while in his low-pressure environment of Colorado, where there's not a lot of pressure to be good, except for people that actually care, like me. And he can just collect the paychecks. He can and he can be the leader. He can be the veteran guy. Kris Bryant is sitting there chilling. I mean, maybe I don't know. I don't know if I'm just letting emotions get in the way here. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting so pissed off by the fact that you just read it's like the Rockies deserve this. The Rockies did this to themselves. The Rockies doing this is a total Rockies move. This story coming out proves that the Rockies are just the Rockies. And that's correct. The Rockies' image problem continues. The Rockies' perception problem continues. And Kris Bryant has to be a piece in changing that. It is on both the Rockies and Kris Bryant to help them get themselves out of the hole that they have dug themselves in, because now they are in the wake of the worst season in franchise history, and projections have them at being even worse. It is prove it time for the Colorado Rockies front office. It is prove it time for Kris Bryant. There is no way around that. This team has to play better this year. This team has to take steps in the right direction going forward, or they are going to continue to be the laughing stock of baseball, continue to be a team that any time that they get coverage gets that little tongue-in-cheek punch you in the balls of saying of how bad this team is, because that's all the national coverage that's going to be for this team. Couldn't even really read this Athletic piece because I don't subscribe to the Athletic because they cut their Rockies reporter. deemed unworthy enough to have coverage, unless you got Kris Bryant here where you can just throw some more stuff at the Rockies for being inept and pulling off a dumb move. Because if you're just going to sit here and say, yeah, he was just a guy that I thought was fitting with these young guys for that contract, that's a bad contract then, Bill. You are admitting that you overpaid for a non-superstar to fit in with your young core. Well, he hasn't even played a full season yet, and we're not sure he's going to play a full season yet this year either. He can sit there and say he's healthy. He can sit there and that. But until Kris Bryant gets 500 plate appearances, and actually contributes to the Colorado Rockies consistently, I don't really want to read these pieces. I don't really care what Kris Bryant has to say about reevaluating this, because Kris Bryant hasn't lived up to his side of the bargain. And I know the injuries are unlucky, but when he's been on the field, he certainly hasn't been a game changer. And he was paid game changer money. Man, I just... The only thing to come from this thing is just how bad the Rockies' reputation is, how bad the perception of the Rockies is, and the mistakes that the Rockies continue to make as an organization. Because it ain't a good look for Kris Bryant to come out here and basically say that he regrets signing with the Rockies. I know it's not exactly what he's saying, but it is certainly heavily implied. Remember, it's like, oh, shoot, I need to get there. There were other teams interested, but I didn't want to wait around. It was a completely different situation for a lot of free agents at the time. I guess I didn't do as much research into the prospects as I could have. His words. Do your research then, Kris. Or just come out and say, hey, it was the best deal available, and I took it, because I think that's really what it was. I don't think there was any team close to offering you 7 years and $180 million. That's why you signed with the Rockies. Wasn't a farm system. I wonder how much research really goes into that farm system, that they look into farm system stuff. I don't know. I'm legitimately asking. Like there was some schmarm with that, but I do genuinely wonder. All right, quick recap of yesterday's game. I'm going to get off the soapbox. Let me know, how did you all feel reading this piece? How did you all feel in the result in the aftermath of reading that piece yesterday? Let me know how you feel in the comments. Let me know what's on your mind when it comes to this Kris Bryant piece and everything that came out from it. Quick break, and then we'll wrap things up. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We talked about that Kris Bryant article there and him speaking out, and I think I'm more frustrated with Bill Schmidt from that piece, to be totally honest. I really think I am. Rockies win a barn burner yesterday in spring training there, 10-9. The Rockies were in control of this game for a bit until the back half of the game. Saw some home runs from Montero and Tovar, two guys that are looking good this spring. But we were able to see, there was a ton of people that were in this game, and it was mostly a young guys game yesterday. So it's good to see the young guys go out and be able to score a lot of runs there before all of the changes in there. Dakota Hudson gets walks a couple of people, but Rockies pitching is still, every Rockies pitcher gets a strikeout there. Tyler Kinley able to navigate some interesting situations there, getting a couple strikeouts, dealing with the walk and a hit in his inning pitched as well. But again, Rockies pitchers still getting their strikeouts, still showing off some strikeout abilities as we get to the close of the first full week of spring training. So good stuff to see there. Like I said, in the concerning trends, you never want to see this, though, when you're sitting pretty. Let's see, the Rockies going into the seventh, the bottom of the seventh, had a 9-6 lead there going into the seventh. And then did I get that right? 3, 4. No, I'm sorry. They had a 5-run lead heading into the bottom of the seventh. The Cubs then go score in the bottom of the seventh and eighth, 2 runs each, and then another run in the ninth. Good thing the Rockies had an extra run of insurance there in the top of the ninth to get the win. But again, just like that, you can't fall apart and collapse like that, especially when you got a 5-run lead in the back half of ball games. That's the type of stuff we got to avoid and be careful with. But it still is spring training, and we'll still see how the Rockies navigate it And we'll see what's next as they play the Mariners coming up today here as spring training rolls on. We'll be covering it all right here on Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and checking us out on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day, or if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs have you covered. Until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.